Here on Beat the Press, we've talked repeatedly about President Trump's hostility to the media, but this week the New York Times revealed that antipathy might go further than any of us thought. Adam has more.
The focus of this New York Times bombshell was a claim that President Trump pushed then FBI Director James Comey to stop investigating his former advisor, Michael Flynn. But deep in the piece, there was another shocker.
Mr. Trump reportedly floated the idea that Mr. Comey should consider putting reporters in prison for publishing classified information.
So could it happen? Brian Stelter thinks not.
It will be a very dark new chapter in this story. I don't think it's a chapter that will be written.
Others aren't so sure. Margaret Sullivan thinks Trump might follow the style of foreign leaders like Turkey's Erdogan. Also, the Trump administration is reportedly preparing charges against Julian Assange, which could set a precedent for prosecuting other outlets that publish classified info.
We are going to step up our effort and already are stepping up our efforts on all leaks.
Something Trump's predecessor also did.
President Obama has used the espionage to go after leakers more than every other president in history combined.
Still, Obama never put a reporter in prison for covering leaks. And the idea that Trump might like to has the ring of truth.
By the way, I hate some of these people, but I'd never kill them. I would never do that. Let's see. No, I wouldn't.
Yeah. That was before he was president, right? So, Adam, he also referenced another era when more journalists were jailed. What was he talking about?
That's a terrific question. And I can't tell you. I'm not sure what the president was thinking of. This is one of those things.
He wasn't talking about Judith Miller.
Periodically, I don't know. He is inscrutable and gnomic in his public utterances or private utterances on frequent occasion. I think this is an example of that. I don't know what the good old days were that he's pining for. I do think it's a mistake to assume, as Brian Stelter seems to, that, well, no, there's institutional constraints that are going to keep this from happening. I think my understanding, Dan, you can tell me if I'm wrong about this, is that legally, for example, the whole idea of prior restraint, the doctrine of prior restraint, that isn't going to keep him from imprisoning a journalist who publishes a leak. It might allow the publication, but it's not going to prevent legal trouble after a while. And I think this fits with his intense hostility toward everyone who does anything like what we do.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some commentary suggesting that, well, the First Amendment, he can't overturn that. You can jail journalists without touching the First Amendment. First of all, you can jail them if they refuse to give up their confidential sources on some of these leaks. So that's one route that you can take it. But there's also a possibility of espionage prosecutions of journalists, as was suggested after the Pentagon Papers, after the National Security Agency revelations in 2006. It's only custom that it hasn't been done. It doesn't mean that it can't be done. So I think we should look at this as a real threat.
I think if your Attorney General is Jeff Sessions, then you should be prepared to go at any point, because he will just create the reason, give him some phony legal thing, and there they go, the two of them hand in hand, to jail as many journalists as they would like, particularly the ones they don't like for the moment. And then we shouldn't be surprised that while in jail, probably same journalist gets a call from the president, just to give him some other information, because that's what he does. Yeah. He yells at people out in the public. He raises up all of this intensity with public people against certain journalists, and then he's calling them on the side to give them information. If y'all don't know that, that's what's happening.
I wonder sometimes when, and I brought this up before, when President Trump throws some of these things out there, just the threat of something happening sometimes will accomplish his ultimate goal. And so, yes, established journalists aren't going to be, sort of pushed aside from going after any kind of information that might uncover something. But I wonder if there is this sense that some journalists out there could be intimidated by this and could be pushed away from digging and finding corruption or something else like that.
My old boss, Jim Coffer's, used to say there's nothing to build a journalist career than like being put in jail, so I don't know.
Right.
Well, we just had a journalist from, CQ Roll Call who was physically manhandled after trying to ask a question of the FCC commissioner, so that's of a piece with what you're talking about. We got to note that we're having this discussion right when a couple of huge stories have hit. We've learned from the Washington Post that a White House advisor is a person of interest in the probe of ties to Russia. And it's been reported by the New York Times that Donald Trump told Russians in the Oval Office that Comey was a nut job and that he has greatly eased the pressure on himself. By canning him, we know both those things due to leaks.
Wow.
I would say that Michael Schmidt needs to be careful. New York Times reporter who's been doing a lot of these reports.
And what's the
back.
SNL guy? Glenn.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.